With Roster Mania in full effect, I want to talk on two newly changed rosters, Gen.G and UYU. First on Gen.G, Spacely let it be known that he is a restricted free agent under Gen.G and is looking to possibly pursue available options in the league. Now, this one really did shock me in regards to Gen.G, right? Arguably one of the best teams in the league decides, hey, let's go ahead and make a roster change. Let's go ahead and kind of change things up a little bit. You know what? That 6-1 record, despite a 6-1 record in Division A, a first seed heading into Pool A at CWL Fort Worth, they felt it was in their best interest. Now's the time to make a roster move. Now, from what I have been told, Envoy, previously of Midnight, will be joining the team in place of Spacely, and that is due to sources that I have been talking to. And I do have to admit, I think that this change does make sense in terms of what Gen.G might need in the future. Now, as of right now, we talk about their 6-1 record. They were looking fantastic in Search and Destroy. They go 9-0 in Search and Destroy. They literally haven't lost more than 4 rounds in a single Search and Destroy map so far in the Pro League, but yet also somehow managed to drop almost every single Game 1 hardpoint, right? The respawns have been the talk about Gen.G, but in their Search and Destroy and in that Game 2, 3, 4, they've been able to respond quite well, and even in Game 5s from time to time. Like I said, they've not lost a Search and Destroy, so that is something to take note of. But clearly the direction that they go is to look and improve when it comes down to the respawns. Without mocks on the map, I want to talk about Gen.G a little bit, talk about their stats, right? Without mocks on the map, the rest of the Gen.G players' average KDs go to a 0.91 in hardpoint. Not one of them, by the way, individually, are even close to even. I think the highest is a 0.96. So that kind of puts in perspective. Gen.G might be thinking, hey, okay, at least in hardpoint, we're kind of losing these Game 1 hardpoints. We're good in Search and Destroy. Our control hasn't been that bad by any means, but maybe we should start to evaluate our hardpoint. Is there a respawn game possibly messed up? Let's go and talk about control. In regards to control, without mocks on the map, everyone else's average out to a 0.95 KD. Also in control, like I said, people have been talking and saying, well, Gen.G's, control, they're 4-3. They do have a positive record. By the way, in every single one of those 4 victories that they've had so far in the Pro League, every single one of those victories, they've won in a 3-2 fashion, going to the very last round. So we talk about and say, hey, maybe if they wouldn't have won that last round, if they would have maybe had a few things go the wrong way, if they would have accidentally maybe, played a certain situation wrong, we could be talking about a whole different record, right? That Search and Destroy gives you a lot of momentum heading into the control. But if you lose the control, how confident are you in a 0.91 respawn team, despite obviously having your best player who is an ICR? So for me, I think Gen.G realized, how long is this stable for, right? How can we really keep relying on an ICR, which honestly could be changed at any moment, to keep us in games, right? How are we going to rely on mocks to keep us in these games, at least as far as respawns are considered, because he was looking fantastic. And for Gen.G, a lot of it is on teamwork, and you cannot take that away. That's not at all what I'm saying. But in regards to statistics, you have to kind of keep things in mind as time moves forward. Can this be consistent? Because at least as far as Call of Duty history is considered, it usually doesn't happen that way. Now, I think they realized, can we keep losing early hardpoints and rely solely on Search and Destroys to win series? Is that sustainable? And for them, it seems as if that was not the case, that they can't keep relying on solely one game mode to keep them alive, despite obviously having a 6-1 record, which you have to obviously look at and say, wow, that's very impressive. Now, they also closed out Week 2 of Division A by winning a narrow Game 5 versus LG and a narrow Game 5 versus Optic. And at the very last stage, in their very last match, they end up losing to who? Midnight. Funny enough, Envoy's previous roster, 3-1. Now, I think Envoy is a great player, for the record. I have been watching Envoy play since early Advanced Warfare. I've been casting over him at local tournaments heading into, him recently becoming of age of 18 and even here into Black Ops 4 a lot in World War II. So I think he's absolutely going to help this team in regards to the SMG side of things, in regards to the slang side of the what Gen.G really needs. And also one thing that a lot of people may not know, Envoy is also a fantastic Search and Destroy player. So that's also something to look out for as well, in regards to at least his previous history. Now, the only issue I can possibly see that this team might have is probably internally, right? Envoy and Havoc also both like to play very fast. Jet Li was a support entry kind of for Envoy throughout, most of the time on Midnight. And I'm interested to see the dynamic between both of those players and how they're going to work, because Envoy also in past, when I talk about, internal things, He's not necessarily the player who likes to get instruction. He's the one who likes to give instruction. He was the very big vocal leader back on Midnight. So I'm curious to see how that will kind of be toned down. And I think due to voices, especially like Mox, I think that's going to be very helpful for him, in regards to this team. But it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of meshes with a totally new group of players. But one thing that you also can't write down on paper, by the way, is leadership. How a player communicates in and out of game. In past, we've seen teams look towards slaying power instead of chemistry, which isn't always the best way to move, right? This Gen.G team, maybe they had a certain aspect about their game that was pretty much relied upon chemistry regarded around teamwork, which is the name of the game in Search and Destroy. And they were fantastic at that. So maybe taking out that vocal leader, taking out that veteran and Spacely, maybe it might ruin things. Maybe it might change things up if they're not careful, because it has, like I said, ruined a lot of teams in the past, especially in Black Ops 4. We talk about teamwork, chemistry. That's the name of the game. But obviously Gen.G goes out and they try to change things up. And I'm curious to see whether or not this situation with Gen.G will lead to a positive result. I think as for now, they're looking in the right situation. They're looking, at least for me, they're looking toward the future in the right way. I will give them that. Next up, we need to talk about UYU. I've been told that Parzelion, previously of Midnight, will be joining this team in place of Skies, who will now be in full effect as the team's substitute. Now, immediately, I've been seeing a lot of discussion around Parzelion and Methods, and people have been saying, okay, these guys, how are they going to work together? They both had the same role. People have said, wait, Methods is way too slow to play with another ICR. How in the world can he play with Parzelion? Now, throughout Week 1 and Week 2 of Division A, we have seen at times Methods with the ICR in his hands, or with Skies having it in his hands as well. In quite a few of their matches, though, I can remember, I forget who the commentator was, but I remember one of the commentators saying, wow, like UYU, they've been running this double Maddox setup pretty much like, that's kind of like a staple for them. Like, we don't really see too much ICR play from them depending on the map, but for the most part, it's double Maddoxes most of the time. So, for the same people that have said also, Methods, way too slow. Can't work with Parzelion. I would then ask you this. Did you know that as of this moment, and currently the CWL Pro League, that Methods is 8th in damage per minute in Hardpoint right now? Did you know that he is one of only 2 assault rifle players involved in the top 8 for damage per minute in Hardpoint? Along with players like Hook, Temp, Abizi. He's right up there. So to say that he's not playing fast enough, clearly he's getting a lot of damage done along with some of the fastest SMGs in this game. Did you also know that for most of UYU's matches, people who have also been saying, oh, he's the main ICR, well, a lot of the times he's been running the Maddox. Same thing with Skies. Like, they don't really have, not that they don't have a designated ICR, but I think it's very prevalent that he likes to use the Maddox. And probably that score, the damage per minute is mostly off of him using that particular weapon, using the Maddox. I don't think he would have that high of a damage per minute score in Hardpoint if he was the RCR. Now, I don't personally think adding a guy like Parzelion won't be as much, if at all, a problem with Methods on the team. I really don't. I don't think it's going to be nearly as big of a problem as people are starting to make it out to be. I do truly understand what did occur right back in World War II, and by adding 2 main assault rifle players in Optic with Octane and Methods along with Krim, it did not lead obviously to a great result, and the team's track record by no means looked great post that. But this is a different game, right? This is a totally different game. World War II to Black Ops 4, totally different title, especially in regards to 4v4 versus 5v5. Look at me saying that titles don't always transfer. That doesn't happen very often. I feel like a lot of times I'm someone who's criticized for saying, oh my gosh, like this guy's saying like this player was good in this title. What does that mean he's going to be good in this title? So for once, I'm actually agreeing and saying that sometimes titles don't always transfer over. But let's say this. Parzelion's respawn numbers speak for themselves, right? In Division A, Hardpoint a 1.35, Control a 1.12, Respawn overall a 1.24. And one thing that I also think could really benefit UYU is by investing in the assault rifles. There's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk in the patches about saying, hey, watch out for the ICR. Obviously, the Maddox might receive some tone downs, but regardless, the assault rifles could look pretty good. The Swordfish, I don't know, that looks like a pretty decent weapon over there. So I will say, I do respect that for a lot of teams. Nicholas 6 was one that they are kind of investing in more of the AR type players, guys who like to run the ICR quite a bit of the time. So for me, if there were to be a patch that comes out and now the ICR is pretty much the new Maddox, you could argue UYU's in a fantastic position. I am very interested, though, to see exactly how Proto and Knight continue to lead in terms of SMG pressure. They by no means have been one of the better SMG duos, essentially, throughout the Pro League, so I am interested to see how those two do in regards to that, because I think that as of right now, when you look at who the best players are on the team, it's definitely more AR heavy. But in terms of ARs, let's go and talk about that a little bit, right? Because if you are UYU right now, in regards to KD, in regards to hardpoint more specifically, you've got the number 2, the number 12, and the number 15 player in those spots. So highest KDs, you've got number 2, number 12, and number 15 in hardpoint. And in control, you've got the number 1, the number 5, and the number 16. So you're looking pretty good, at least in terms of slaying. You've got 3 guys in Methods, Mayhem, and Parzelion who are fantastic with the Maddox/ICR. You got some very, very talented players when it comes down to your assault rifles. But I am excited to see both of these rosters compete. I think that they definitely could be making some improvements in regards to both of these teams' lineups, especially when in terms of UYU, who did not look the greatest in their particular division. But I am excited to see how they do moving forward more specifically. But I will say it does make me a little bit sad to see Midnight players start to break apart, considering how strong this Cinderella story, considering how strong this young team was looking in the CWL Pro League.